Don't get too close.
I'm not, it's still doing it. Why is it do that?
The info audience turned up too high on.
They turn it down.
Not touching it.
Was yours on before that happened? That button
I turned it off.
was off?
Yeah.
Now it's back on?
Now it's off. There's on.
So it's between us.
It's just in general. I think it's like right after it's all did.
Are we showing up? Sorry. It says council. It says live. So.
Sugar. Peas.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get started. As always, before we get started, make sure that you speak slowly and into the microphone. All right, we're going to start our committee meetings. First up is streets, sidewalk, and lighting with Mr. Greer.
All right.
I'll tell you what, before we get started, make sure we're live.
We're good.
Okay? Okay.
I'm like,
All right, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order streets, sidewalk, and lighting. Today is October 19th, 2020, 6 p.m. We're at the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee are present and other council members and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have one late piece of request for legislation. It's a draft ordinance titled 2020-2021 Street, Road, and Salt Program. Since this is late, do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Nina
And I'll second it.
and seconded by Brian. All in favor? Aye. All right, so this is a draft ordinance titled 2020-2021 Street, Road, and Salt Program, authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Cargo Incorporated for the 2020-2021 Street, Road, Salt Program through the Community University Education Purchasing Program. Mr. Tracy, the Service Director, sent a letter asking us to call for this piece of legislation. In the letter, it stated that the city of Barberton is committed to 1,750 tons plus or minus 20% of the following prices. And these prices are per ton. Dumped at $71.89, piled at $76.89, and conveyed at $76.89. I did some research online just because I wasn't really familiar with the Community University Education Purchasing Association. And it seems like a lot of surrounding communities are using this. I couldn't really find any other details. So, Mr. Tracy, could you elaborate on what this program is, why we use it? And I believe that in here it says we don't have to do bid process since we are part of this.
So they do the bid process and they do the negotiating. So the CUE is something that's in relation to the universities in the area and a bunch of local governments. The university is the consortium they make up. They have a consortium that is compliant with the Ohio Revised Code for procurement of products and services, and they go out and do the bidding, and then it's considered a public bid. it's the same thing as if we were gonna buy it from like NJPA or Sourcewell, National IPA. We bought other equipment from those consortiums as well, but those consortiums comply with the ORC as far as the bidding and procurement process. So there's, I don't know how many people are involved in CWE, as far as the number of people that are signed up for it, but I can tell you I've sat in meetings where there's over 100 people in the meeting. So a lot of surrounding communities, Kent, Green, pretty much everyone in the area surrounding University of Akron is included in the CWE.
And this company, does bulk, they bid based on everybody else's commitment,
Yes.
and
so
they store it.
No, everybody stores their own.
Okay.
Cargill stores the salt.
And could you explain what the differences of dumped, piled, and conveyed is?
Yeah, so there's just 3 different methods of delivery. Dump is exactly what it says.
They dump it.
We can't utilize dump salt with our dome. The way that the dome is designed, the best thing for the city of Barton is conveyed. So we always get it conveyed. We've had it piled before. It's still not as efficient. It requires us to do a lot of work with the front end loader to try to pile everything up in there. And we actually, a couple years ago, we made adjustments to we made modifications to the doorway to our dome. We raised it 6 to 10 feet, put a new roof on everything to try to expand our options as far as getting it piled or try to push some up in there if it were to get dumped. And it just doesn't work well with our dome style storage. So we historically always got it conveyed and will continue to do that.
I know that the ORC says that they're compliant. We don't need to bid. Have we tried looking at other places? Just
So
curious.
we have in the past, the CUE, I believe, is fairly new as far as our involvement. I know in the past, there's been times that we've looked at the bids with ODOT. ODOT does a bid, so you could go off of their bid as well. But historically, we've gotten great pricing with the CUE. In fact, many times it's better than what ODOT is.
I don't have any further questions. Are there any questions from Mr. Bevick?
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious, what our stockpile consists of, because I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. There was possibly going to be a salt shortage, and we bought extra, so I didn't know. I know we had a kind of a mild winter last year.
So we're full right now. We have a good supply. That's why the reason for the 1750. There's been years when we've committed up to 4,000 tons. But right now, to a full dome, we wouldn't need more than 1750. Plus, we're 20% plus or minus of that, so we can get a little bit more if necessary.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from committee or council? Mr. Heide?
Thank you, Chair. Just for information for the membership here, I did look back. Last year, we did pay the exact same price to the penny, so that has not moved this year.
Correct. I think that's a valid statement. That's when I did the research, it was at $76 via media sources, but $76 for some of the surrounding communities that I've seen too as well. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion to call for this.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mrs. Fry. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Miscellaneous discussion. The sewer project or the sewer construction project that was on Fifth Street has moved down to North Van Buren. Nixle was sent out over the weekend, informing residents and everybody that this project was going to close down North Van Buren from Washington to Franklin, and it's scheduled to be closed October 19th through the 23rd, and that is today through the 23rd. Is there any update on that project, Mr. Crazy?
Other than, everything on Fifth Street and down Houston, as far as the project is related to the project, is completed. As far as installation of the storm sewers, obviously there's still restoration to be done. But now they'll be working on crossing Van Buren and working up Lincoln all the way to Fifth Street.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from the committee? Any discussion from council? Or gallery? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angelo. And we are now adjourned at 6:08 PM.
Okay, next up, excuse me, is Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. J.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting today, October 19th, 2020. At 6:08 at Action Adult Center. Members present noted. Our council members present noted also, and guests. Today's topics, we have no request for legislation. And with that, I'm opening it up for the committee for miscellaneous discussion. Hearing none, and, open it up.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to update everybody in the committee. I reached out to the city about the homeless. There was a guy that posted on social media and showed some trash and carts in the river down at where the old Tusk Bridge was at. Although we didn't have a contract with, I forget the company, they did come out and they are addressing and trying to get a hold of the people that are down there, to get them with resources.
Kind of which ward that was in? The Ward 1 or Ward 2?
Be on the border of 4 and 2, is that kind of where that's at?
It's Ward 4. Ward 4.
And this was recent.
Jim's Automotive?
Yeah, where the Peaceful Bridge is at.
So Jim's Automotive is Ward 4?
I'm sorry.
No. 4, it's the border, I believe.
Yeah.
It's like right in between.
So,
It was given to planning and they're on it now. It's just part of the budget that we passed. I was inquiring about it. It was nothing. I just wanted to fill everybody in.
I just want to know just Ward 4, so I can also look into it. Can you find out for us, Mr. Trevor Hunt? That is Ward 4 or Ward 2 on there?
What's the address? I'm sorry.
Jim's Automotive by the, what's it called next to it?
Peaceful Fruits.
Peaceful Fruits.
Okay.
It's Ward 4.
Peaceful Fruits is Ward 4.
I don't think so.
I don't think it is.
I don't think, I think it
I can
was
double check.
from,
I think the river is the dividing.
You were Councilman.
Right, I think the river is
It's
the dividing.
right on the river.
Well, we had checked this before on some other issue that we had a few years ago, and it was determined to go forward. Because Van Buren up, not down, Van Buren up. is Ward 2. I think-
The map said it.
Well, and the thing is, Mr. Greer, you said that, you checked with planning, so that's part of the CDBG funds.
Correct. I knew that we added some homeless stuff on there and I was wondering if we got it yet. And it wasn't, nothing dire. It was just me inquiring
Right,
about it.
yeah, very good.
Mr. Trevor Hunt, you got a chance, can you check that out in the emails for us? Certainly, I appreciate your time, thank you.
I have a question.
Good point. We need people.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
If a homeless person, they don't have a home or a
Obviously,
house
we
or
want to know
anything like
before
that.
we get help out in this routine. So we do our job as council members.
Excuse me?
Thank you.
Are you looking it up?
It's right on the border.
Yeah, I thought they were.
I don't know how official it would be, but Google Maps has it in Ward 1.
Feel free.
You can always go to Summit County Board of Elections. That's how I always find out. You go there and you put in the address and it will tell you what ward you're in. When anybody calls me and asks me what ward, that's how I do it.
Hearing any other discussion? Any other committee members?
All right, motion to adjourn, please. Make a motion to adjourn. Mr. Griffin?
I'll second that.
And Mr. Aye. And we are adjourned at 6:12, sir.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Mrs. Angela with planning, annexation, and code.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning annexation of codes is meeting now at 6:13 PM at the Active Adult Center. All members are present along with council and other guests as noted on my sheet. We have one piece of legislation for request. It's a draft ordinance titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1462, ICC International Property Maintenance Code. Amending ordinance number 23-2008 to amend the Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1462, ICC International Property Maintenance Code, to make it the most current edition adopted. After talking to Mr. Tracy today, we are using the most current adopted edition through ICC, but our city ordinance has not been updated. So basically what this is doing, it's going to remove where it says edition adopted to say the most current edition adopted. So whenever ICC has a change in it, then it's not necessary for us to go to council to make a change in it. We will use the most current edition that has been adopted by ICC. Mr. Tracy.
I just want to clarify something because I misspoke earlier to you on the phone today.
Oh.
That we are still using the 2006. So there's been a 2009, 2012, 2015, and 18. So it gets updates every 3 years. The updates are, they're typically fairly insignificant, but they are updates. ICC is minimum qualifications. It's important to remember that. It's kind of like the baseline, the foundation of a property maintenance code. Any state laws supersede it. The stricter of any law is the one that should be followed. Any local ordinances, rules would outgovern the ICC, but the ICC are minimum guidelines. In case, let's say you don't have something locally that covers a certain subject, it's covered in the ICC. So that's the reason for adopting them. What it is now is, we'd like to purchase the 2018 for like 4 licenses is about $100 or something for the electronic version, so that we can use the most up-to-date version of ICC. Change the language so every 3 years. We can keep updating that, and not have to come back to council for something that's a pretty much a formality.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from anybody on city council? Okay,
I'll make the motion that we approve that.
okay, Mrs. Cooper's going to make the motion. Second motion,
I'll second.
Mr. Guerrero. All in favor? Motion carries. Any miscellaneous discussion? I have none. Yes, Mrs.
I'm not sure if this is the right platform to make a comment, but I received a call regarding 467 West Tusk, regarding tires and shopping carts behind it. I don't know, I didn't get a chance to drive by and actually look at it with my own 2 eyes, but I will do that, so I
Did that, you said West Tusk?
West Tusk, yes,
Yes, it's Ward 4?
yes. Yeah, at least I think so. I think it's at the end of, right before it dead ends into Worcester Road. Somewhere, like, I looked on the map, it has to be down on that last block where the Boilermakers, hall is, nothing's really on that block.
Okay.
Where it used to be the bridge.
Yes,
That's,
Down there.
Next
That's-
time.
Okay.
Yeah, where the bridge used to go over.
it looks like the little,
Dead end.
yes.
it was like a little ramp that went down. But is that what you're talking about? Right
I don't know
next to the
exactly which
electrical building?
address it is.
Like First National.
Right.
Right? First National on the.
I think it's near the old medical, was there a medical?
Yeah.
The medical place there in the bank, the
Yes.
old bank across the street.
Mhm. I'm not sure because I didn't drive by the address, but,
There's still that ramp that goes down.
My building's 527.
Yeah, that address is the,
Okay, that really
that big
would,
blue building that's on the corner.
that
where
It's
really,
right
the
next-
is.
Yeah, it's
That's
right
downtown.
next to it.
So
But
so
it's the same building.
it could either be that ramp that goes down where there's a gap between, the old Lily's Tavern and, Boilermakers. There's
Yeah,
like a gap there, so.
that alleyway back there.
that's not really planning to listen to that.
No, I didn't think it was, but I don't,
Okay,
I
I'll just,
I was gonna mention safety when we were talking about another property or about something,
Yeah, that-
so I just,
I'll bring it up to the building department, that's the proper department for it to go to. So I'll
building
talk
part,
to
I was
the
gonna say, Mr. Trevor, did you give that 467
I got it
West
written
Side?
down, yeah. We'll take
Thank
it.
you.
I can send you an email.
Yeah, please, just follow up.
You got to, Mrs. This is my voice. Thank you.
Yeah, I can send an email, I just didn't want to put that. Thank you, Ms. Angela.
Mhm. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Ms. Angel?
Yes.
Full statement to the plan, please. I spoke to a gentleman named Brett regarding 467 West Page Street. He's looking to open a movie studio. Forward information to Mr. Trevor Hunt. He's supposed to meet, I think, on 26th, you said, it's Trevor?
The 27th, I believe.
27th, okay.
He hasn't gotten back to me with my last email, but I believe the 27th is what.
That'd be nice. I did a little tour of it, and it's really nice inside. You got different movie studios and scenes, I'm sorry, it's different scenes. The courthouse, the casino, the DJ place, things like that. So it'd be nice to see that come to downtown Barberton. Also spoke to the owner of Burger King that was interested in coming last year. He said right now it's 2020. He's not interested in coming to Barberton right now, but maybe in the future, he was 2021, he'll look back into it. If the properties that he liked come available for sale, or he wants to interested in coming downtown. He's looking more about the McDonald's area, he said. Also spoke to a gentleman named James from the Greater Green Foundation about the softball field, the sports complex, Barberton Sports Complex right there off Worcester Road. And he's looking to see if we can do something with that to keep it as softball fields. Nothing to do with soccer fields, just softball fields. And we gave him Lisa's number. And Lisa gave me her number, and I gave her his information tonight. Hopefully he'll follow up with that. And, let's see what else. Also, dry cleaning downtown is allegedly closing down. Lake Anna one, it's called Lake Anna Dry Cleaning. If it hasn't closed down, it's soon to be closing down. It's sad to see that leave. It's good business, just because COVID or is business slow. We can follow up on that. And also had another gentleman look at the Old Daly's Chiropractor for Cigar Lounge. He's, seems very interested. And, if I get any more information, I'll pass that on to the plan, Mr. Hunt. And with that, I pass. Any more? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Jaber, what was the address for that proposed movie studio again?
It is at 467 West Page.
Thank you.
His name is Brett. Can you number of the information? That's by your business almost.
Yeah, I believe that's,
Right
right
behind
at the end of the alley.
Yeah, right behind it's a pretty big building. If you look at it from outside, it looks small.
That's, I know which building it is. That's, as soon as I started picturing in my head there.
I think the last time he was looking at it, just parking situation, giving him a hard time. Again, it's nice to see some businesses trying to come to Barberton. Their job is council members bring them in. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about Foundation Fields.
Yes.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is that a park, Lisa? We can't sell.
I asked for information, but they said they couldn't give it to me, but that's why I didn't know. But they said they can, we can put on the ballot in May, I believe, if we wanted to. Isn't that right, Patty?
It has to go to the ballot.
Yeah, to sell
Exactly,
vacate any park land, it would have to go to the ballot. And
Yes.
if somebody was truly serious about wanting something, then as chair of the city properties and parks, I would want a pretty detailed plan before I would
I
even
did
move it
put
forward.
an email.
Yep.
Hopefully, they have meetings.
And do you know, Mr. Jabber, if Mrs. McLean, is she working with any other, the Silver League or anything of that sort for
I
leasing
asked
those?
her, I sent her an email, and she also added the mayor she said just have them contact her. It's a department head, he said, is exact wording, so.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Greer, thank you.
I'll second that.
Mrs. Copeland, and we adjourn at 6:25. Thank you.
Okay, we have a special public welfare and safety meeting, and this is the day.
I'd like to bring to order the Special Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, October 19th at 6:25 here in the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and all others noted. We have a couple of late requests for legislation, and after looking them over, I believe it's a tweak to the radio system that we passed legislation for last week. So, before we discuss the first one, do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Greer, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Griffin, all in favor? Aye. The first one is appropriation fire department, and this will be referred to finance if it comes out of committee. It's appropriating $3,921.21 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund. And in the letter from Chief Persley, the additional amount is due to a component of the radio system being accidentally omitted from the original request. I'm assuming it's a necessary.
Yeah, what it is it's a battery analyzer. So each radio has its own battery, and in order to properly take care of them, you have to put them through an analyzer periodically for routine maintenance. When we got the request, the proposal, it was actually on 5 different spec sheets. When I was adding it up to write the legislation, one of those pieces was not in my original folder that I used to add everything up. So my apologies, new guy mistake. So
No problem.
thanks. Any other questions? Okay.
Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
Motion to call for.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Greer, all in favor? Aye. So that will be referred to finance. The next piece of legislation also has to do with the radios. Do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mr. Greer, do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Mr. Griffin, all in favor? And this piece of legislation is titled Amend Ordinance Number 121-2020, Vasu Communications, Inc., amending Ordinance Number 121-2020 by increasing the amount of the contract with Vasu Communications, Inc. by $4,314.21, which would bring the total amount of contract to $200,987.17. And so I'm guessing that this is for that $3,921 and then our matching portion.
Correct.
Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion to call for.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Greer, all in favor? Aye. And it passes. Chief, do you have anything else for us?
I hope not. No, no, that's all. Thank you for your
Thank you,
understanding. I do
Thank you
appreciate
very
it.
much. Does anyone else have anything? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mr. Greer, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. We are adjourned at 6:29.
Okay, we have another special meeting. It is city utilities with Mrs. Culver.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a special city utilities meeting. This is Monday, October 19th, 2020. We have a late request for legislation for a draft ordinance titled Change Order Eclipse Construction. We'll have to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. Do I have a motion for that? Carol?
I'll make the motion.
Carl? Do you please?
I kind of would like to discuss it before we second it, just for clarification.
This is to authorize a change order in the amount of $18,089.06 with them for the Betts Ditch restoration project. It has to do with some downtime costs that were incurred because as they were digging, they came upon an oily substance that had to be tested before they could move on. Fortunately, it came back a negative, and it was only we only had to pay this amount instead of the $33,000 that they requested. Is that correct?
So I was just wondering what the downtime costs entail.
So when what happens is you have all the contract pricing that is included in the contract itself. So typically change orders are when you do extra work. In this case, it's because they weren't able to work. So not all contractors have 10 jobs in the area where they can just pull off and go to their job and keep making money. It's protection for this contractor. If it was a smaller contractor that this took 2 months to get this remedied, it could go out of business. So it's protection built into the contract for both the city and the contractor. Now, the costs associated could be owned equipment costs. A lot of these places, they're making payments on this equipment, and also they're expected to, they're performing work for a certain rate. And when they're unable to do that, there's equipment costs, rented equipment costs. The 8-inch pump was there for longer than they wanted it to be. There's fuel costs. There is a little bit of labor involved. There's also, they had restrooms rented, those are minor things, but really the majority of the cost comes in the owned equipment and the rented equipment that's on site. Now, put that in perspective, mobilization for this job and for many jobs is $20,000. So right off the rip, if we would say, well, go ahead and just take the equipment away, it's going to be $20,000 because that's what it costs for them to move it in and move it out, and that's in the contract, and that's not unusual, that's normal. So in this case, we were able to get them down below at least the mobilization amount, so that wasn't an issue for them.
How much additional time did this,
So this was a 10-day work stoppage. So over the 10 days, the first bill came in at $33,000, and after we reviewed it and looked at all the numbers, we noticed that they had a lot of the costs under the active column where they should have been in the idle column because the equipment wasn't actually being used at the time. So we reviewed that, and we reviewed it again at their second submittal and found a couple other discrepancies that were able to get down to $18,000. So once we got to that point, there really wasn't much more to try to negotiate. That was a fair and equitable number for both parties.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
Is this generally part of our contracts when we,
Yeah, so we use this contract was part of the National Society of Professional Engineers. So it's a pretty standard contract. And like I mentioned earlier, there's protections built in for these types of things because this stuff, a although it's rare, I've never had to work through something like this. This is the first time I experienced it. It does occur, and that's why it's built into these contracts. And just I'll just, lay it all out, just for some perspective. Our contract price was $179 some change. They actually came in at $176 overall, so savings of about $3,000. With the change order, the total is about $194, which is still more than $5,000 less than the next highest bid or next lowest bid. So even with the change order, we're still beating the next bid. And the next highest bids after that, I think there were 4 or 5 more bids for the project, are all over $250,000. So all in all, even though you got to pay for something like this, we still did very, very good at this project.
I have a question for Greg.
Good.
I know that I didn't get to print it out, but you did send out an email today, and are those explanations in there?
I didn't put all the details in there. I
Right.
just explained that we had a work stoppage because we had differing subsurface conditions, which is a subject line in the contract. Once you find those conditions, the contractor has to notify the city and our engineer, and we have to go out. We had to take soil samples. It rained a couple times, so we couldn't use those samples. We had to go back out, get samples, overnight into the lab. The lab's got to run the work, so we did it as fast as we could, but it takes some time to get all that done. Then we have to send a letter back, giving the permission to continue work. It keeps everybody safe. We didn't want anyone working out there if there was something that was toxic or something. But luckily, all the VOCs came back negative.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for that, even though I didn't bring it, but I knew that you sent us. And I don't know if you just sent to the committee or all of it.
I sent it to the committee and CC'd the rest of the council.
Thank you.
And we are lucky that that came back non-toxic.
Yes, it was stressful. I don't know the next steps. If something came back positive, it would have been extremely expensive. We would have had to haul all the material out, probably to a landfill, pay for all the hauling, pay for all the tonnage of everything. It would have been a significant event. So very fortunate that this was the outcome.
So did they have it itemized then? You said you had it, just because that's like that's $1,889 a day.
Correct. It's itemized on an ODOT force account sheet. It's a pretty large spreadsheet. And you go through, the equipment they're using costs $300,000-$400,000. So the amount of that they're charging is equal to them recouping their costs.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, I did not see your email today, but I came straight from home. So.
Okay, it's fine. I would have went through all this anyways, so that's not a problem.
Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is kind of a general engineering construction question. Did we do core samples before we dug?
No, because this project was on our already, when the city took over the foundation fields in 2000, there was an environmental study done, everything was done, it was labeled as a clean site, so we didn't do core samples.
Do we typically do core samples when we dig like this?
It depends on the project. I don't think anyone expects there to be any rock or anything, so typically you do it to get the
Soil composition.
soil composition and then to see what there's rock. If you're gonna try to dig down 12 more feet, are you gonna be able to do that or not? Will that increase your cost when you hit rock? So we do it at times, but also with the environmental done in 2000, there were wells drilled, core drill wells, and it gives you, however deep they went, sand, clay, rock, it tells you all that.
I will second the motion to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302.
Did you have, okay, thank you. Can we vote on that?
Aye.
Aye. Now, do we have more discussion?
No, I just wanted, before I invoke rules, I just wanted to have a better understanding of what it was.
Can I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
I will second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
We are adjourned at 6:38.
Okay, lastly is finance and personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Well, shut it off, sorry.
Okay. You didn't stop it?
Right.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you, Mr. President. The date is October 19th, Monday. The time is 6:40. We are in the Active Adult Center, and we are starting the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We have a late request for legislation, and we will need to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This particular piece of legislation is a draft ordinance titled Fire Department, appropriating $3,921.20 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund. This was referred to us from safety, and this is in regard to the new radios, which we heard about in Mrs. Debevic's meeting. Do I have a motion to suspend Council Rule 702? Invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Debevic. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Oh, what did I say? I said, okay, Mrs. Angela was first. I'm sorry. I even wrote it on yours, Carla. Seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passed. Does anybody have any more questions about that? I think we've pretty much covered everything in Mrs. Debevic's meeting. So do I have a motion to call for this?
I will make a motion that we call for this.
Motion made by Mrs. Debevic, seconded by Mr. Medges. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes. Second piece of legislation is also a late request, and we will need to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This particular piece of legislation is a draft ordinance authorizing payment to Kimball Recycling and Disposal Incorporated. And this is authorizing the Director of Finance to pay invoices in the amount of $3,773.59 to Kimball Recycling and Disposal. This is this is for the clean out of a commercial building. And the person who owns the building will be reimbursing the city as that's what I understand from having talked to Mr. Flaker and Mrs. Doherty. Do you want to have anything to say about this, Jeremy? You want to add to it?
You basically covered it. We had like you said, a commercial building that was just basically stockpiled with a bunch of trash. It posed a hazard to everyone involved. So we agreed to the property owner for the city to clean it up, and the property owner would then pay the city for the cleanup of that commercial property to get that hazard out of, basically make it safe for everyone involved. So that's all I have. Basically a case of the PO didn't get entered for the trash dumpsters that Kimball had to deliver on site. It was several trash dumpsters delivered there to haul out all that garbage out in the building.
Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Does anybody else have questions? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I guess was this a building that was condemned, or was this just something the city made an agreement that they would?
They didn't make an agreement. Do you want to chime in, Rob, because the fire department had something to do with it as well?
Ms. Ray?
We're talking about the Lambert property, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Either one of you can comment.
So, Councilman Greer, what it was the property owner had stored excess of 900 pallets on the property. The property was located in between ASB Sandblasting up on Lambert Avenue. If it would have caught fire, it would have affected ASB. There was another business that is escaping me right now, and as well as 3 large electrical transformers. We attempted to work with the property owner since 2019, and we're unable to make any headway with it. So what Director Flaker was saying, just to put things in perspective, it took 3 tractor trailers working over a 4-day period to get everything out of there. And I believe it was 4 dumpsters is what my notes are showing. So it was a considerable amount of debris that had to be removed. Does that answer?
Yeah, was this a court ordered thing? Or?
It was, yes.
Okay, so he's bound by law to pay us back through court?
Yep.
Is that the?
So-
Which one?
Yeah, so, this was, just really great work by, Captain Iono and Lieutenant Polachek in the fire department. So, they approached the prosecutor's office and Prosecutor Granberry and Captain Iono worked really well together and, worked out a solution with the defendant in this case and his, family to, come up with a solution. But in order to do that, we had to front the money to get the cleanup, and then he will pay that back in terms of court costs and fines.
Okay.
But we had to get that cleaned up. I mean, it really is unimaginable, the amount of combustible material that was compacted into the smallest space I have ever seen in my career. And Lieutenant Polachek oversaw the removal of all of that, but Captain Ono was the one who uncovered it.
Okay, great, thank you. I just was looking for clarity, what the deal was.
So what I'm showing, Councilman Greer, is just one side of the building. Picture that going around 3 sides of the building, and in the back, the pile of pallets actually went up above, almost up above the roof line of the structure.
Good job, everyone.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any other questions right now? Okay, do I have a motion to invoke Council Rule 702?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. DeBevick. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Mrs. Angela. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It passes.
Just so it's, Akron Sandblasting Preferred Rubber Compounding is the other company.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion. I'll do this.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela, seconded by,
I'll second it.
okay. Carla DeBevick. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That passes as well. All right, we have another late piece of legislation, and we will also have to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This piece of legislation is a draft ordinance titled Appropriation CARES Act Funding, appropriating $4,500 of CARES Act funding from the unappropriated item of the local coronavirus relief fund to the operation and maintenance budget of the local coronavirus relief fund. This particular piece of legislation is an appropriation, as I said, in the amount of $4,500. And this is for sanitizing of different buildings throughout the city and different departments. And this will be CARES money, money from the CARES Act that we will use for this sanitation. I spoke to Jeremy about this as well. But at any rate, does anyone else have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay,
Is this a one-time cleaning?
Yes, this is a one-time cleaning. I'm asking for it as an emergency, because with the cases rising, I would and since we got additional CARES Act funding, I want to be able to sanitize the other departments, especially with the cases rising in the state of Ohio and in this area. It seems like you're hearing about more and more positive cases coming up. So I want to do sanitization at the other departments and buildings that weren't sanitized a couple weeks ago. So this is going to include both treatment plants. It's going to include the street garage. It's going to include the water garage. It's going to include both fire stations. It's going to also include the Parks Administration and the Finance Department. So there's going to be, I think, a total of 9 buildings sanitized. I put out an email to a few companies to get quotes that we had information on. One company didn't get back with me. The other 2 did. This is the lowest company's price based on the square footage that all the departments gave to me. So yes, to answer your question, this will be a one-time sanitization of all these departments. And I'm asked for it as an emergency also due to the fact, as everyone's aware of, this building will be used for voting on November 3rd. So I'm trying to get a company in place, which the company that will be going with said they can get us on the schedule for November 4th. So they'll be able to come in the day after the election and sanitize all the buildings for us. So to help protect the employees.
Thank you.
I have a question, Jeremy. You said it's a one-time cleaning. However, if this virus goes on and on, will we do this at different intervals?
We may have to.
Okay, and as long as we have the CARES funding, it will be paid for out of that fund.
As long as we have CARES funding, yes. The problem with the CARES funding is it has to be used up before the end of this year. So there's not much time left to use the money. So
Okay, it has to be used by December 31st.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, they did extend that because this additional $935,000 that was passed, I want to say it actually goes, you have to use all the money up by, it's the middle of January now, but still, it's,
Right,
you're talking only a couple weeks here.
right.
So, yeah, basically by the end of the year, the money has to be used up, or we have to send it back to the state. So I won't say that we'll have CARES Act money always to do the sanitization, but for right now, I'm gonna use some of it to get sanitizing that should be done.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, I just have one more question, thank you. To piggyback kind of on what you said, Mr. Flaker, would it be, I don't know how long it takes to set them up to come, but if we have CARES Act money, would it be in the city's best interest to schedule them a couple of times and change the amount of this ordinance so that we have them scheduled maybe, 4 weeks, like maybe December 5th, kind of 4 weeks afterwards? I don't know if all the buildings get, I would say maybe this particular room doesn't get as heavy of use as maybe the employees coming and going at the water treatment plants and your office and some of the other offices.
That is a good question. One thing that we have to be cognizant of is with the CARES Act funding, yeah, maybe I could contact this company and say, hey, can you come out for the next, say, come out once every other month for the next 6 months or something like that? And can we use CARES Act funding? The answer is no, because it's basically you have to use it or else it's gone. So we could possibly get one more cleaning of all the buildings in before the end of the year, because they're booked for a couple weeks out. So if we see cases still on the rise, we could have money set aside to have them maybe come out one more time in December to use up more CARES Act funding. But to schedule it out further than that,
Yeah, I was just thinking you said if we could use the money until the middle of January, that would give us a total of 3 cleanings if we counted November, December, and that's, the.
And also be aware
So,
that the cost would go up too, because in this sanitization, I don't have the city building included. So the price will go up even higher if we have them come back in to do the sanitization again. The price will go up a little bit. Like I said, that's for just those. I forget the square footage off the top of my head of the city building. but this company was gonna charge us 13 cents per square foot for the sanitization, so whatever the square footage of the city building is, it's 13 cents per square foot that they would charge, that we would have to.
And I'm also curious if they would, if you're committing to more than one time, if maybe you would get more of a bulk price, or do you think not?
The information I have on this company, they charge anywhere from 10 cents to 50 cents per square foot for this sanitization. So, with them coming out, maybe if we include the city building, maybe they'll drop the rates a little bit lower, but, I mean, we're talking 3 cents difference in the price.
I guess when I said bulk, I meant the 3 times, so that's what I was looking at. Okay, thank you, that's all I had, I just thought that might be a good idea if it takes a while to get them scheduled.
Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Clark.
Ms.
How is that done? Explain it. They solve it in or spray it or something? Does anyone know?
What this company's gonna do, they'll come in and they'll basically, all the heavily touched areas, they'll come in, spray down, wipe it, and they'll go in they'll go out 4 feet from that heavily touched area. So if it's like a door, they'll go 4 feet outside of that door area. Once they do the wipe down, this company will also then come in with an electrostatic sprayer that also has a cleaning solution that will put down a film of the product that they will then let sit for 10 minutes to dwell. And during that 10 minutes is where the virus is actually being killed and destroyed. So he said this company roughly does 5,000 to 8,000 square feet in a 1 hour time span. So it's fairly quick, and it's safe for the employees to go right back into the working space after they get done with the sanitization. Some of these places, they'll use foggers, so they'll fog up the whole area and the ventilation and everything. And the building has to be vacated for 24 hours prior, 24 hours after. Other companies, they want you to wait going back into the area for a couple hours, depending on the chemicals that they're using. But this company here, they said it's safe for employees to go back into the working space after they sanitize the areas, right afterwards. So after that 10-minute dwell time, the employees are safe to go right back in.
Thank you. We didn't invoke the rules yet.
I'll make a motion that we invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302.
Thank you. Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick, seconded by Mr. Medges. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, and, any more discussion on this, or everybody ready to vote? Okay, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion that we call for this.
All right, motion made by Mrs. DeBevick, seconded by Mr. Medges. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That passes as well. That is all the legislation for finance tonight. Do we have any, other topics of discussion that anyone would like to discuss? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn made by Mrs. Angela,
I will second it.
seconded by Mrs. DeBevick, and we are adjourned at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, that does it for our committee meetings. We'll have our committee of the whole meeting in 5 minutes.
On the virus side that's used, if the virus comes in contact with the virus, it goes overnight. So it's a food grade.
It don't have to do this here.
No. The stuff, now you don't spray it right on food. You should still keep it covered, but if it came in contact with food, it's not toxic. We do that four times a year.
More about the paperwork.
This looks like they're
Yeah, I just if they are like.
I was sitting there.
Okay, they're getting social distancing, sticking all the way to the top. That's the only thing I want to recommend. But
I'll get the numbers here. We're having a call. Yeah, we have the general number now.
that's great. Just to get some
Yeah, I think it's great. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I find try to think of everything, but sometimes it's just. See, that's a great thing, right? No problem.
I mean, it's going. They have.
You know what you want to do? What would change?
Hey, bottom line.
They have.
You don't need to have a dumpster out there.
Yeah, you do get that. They probably don't even know that's redundant.
Oh, really? That's all they see is just they go to Christmas. Get a mess of it. Might be the elevator. Oh, yeah. Going a little quick. I'll practice.
He's trying to split his britches out.
That's good. Dude, right? It needs to be higher.
See, that's why the guy can't, because I'm doing all this soap.
Well, yeah, when they fall,
She doesn't like to say stretchy fabric.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think they're hoping they can, but, you know, sometimes freight is just missing. And, you know, sometimes, like, on the tower. Looked over everything, studied the project, and there was one did that job, but the other one really had some time to come in. So we were able to everybody else. Right. Sometimes they're just, you don't get up, I got to stay up in and I'm coming. But, it takes a lot of work. Especially everybody. Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's get the show on the road.
Too late.
Okay, this is a committee of the whole meeting. This is Harvey City Council. Today is Monday, October 19th, 2020. I call this meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Citizens addressing council.
I do have one.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Ray Todd. I'm Ron. I live on Aurora Drive on the east side of Arlington. I would like to address city council and the mayor on the upcoming vote for a 3-year, 3 mil property tax levy to offset the looming deficit brought on by the departure of B&W Corporation. The election is but 3 weeks away, and many of the citizens have already voted, my wife and I included. And yet, we have hardly heard any information about the levy, let alone an attempt to sell it to the voters. I did see where the mayor and Councilman Heidi posted something on Facebook today that is too little, too late. It is almost as if city council and the mayor want this thing to fail. As a longtime resident and employee of the city of Arlington, I have seen many ups and downs in the city's financial position. This is by far the worst. I would have liked to have heard more about the details of the deficit and what lies ahead if it fails. The communication from council and the mayor's office has been poor. I would also like to have heard from the council members who opposed the levy, what is your plan? If this levy fails, I urge you to do a better job of communicating with the residents and a better job of selling the next solution to them. Thank you.
Anything else?
That is the only one.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go into our committee reports. First off is Mrs. Angeloff with Planning, Annexation, and Code.
Thank you, Mr. President. We met this evening at 6:13. All members of my committee was present, along with council members and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we had one piece of legislation request. It's a draft ordinance titled Amending Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1462, ICC International Property Maintenance Code. Amending ordinance number 23-2008 to amend the Barberton Codified Ordinances, Chapter 1462, ICC International Property Maintenance Code, to make it the most current edition adopted. As it reads right now, it says 1462.01, 2006 edition adopted. As it will read with the new one is that it will say the most current adoption. As Mr. Tracy explained to us that the ICC, they update it every year. And so this would be best that we just say the current one as they update it, then we can use the current baseline for the property maintenance. And that motion was carried. We had miscellaneous discussion. Mrs. DeBevick was telling me about tires and trash at 467 West Tusk, Ward 4. Planning doesn't do trash, so that was given to Mr. Tracy. Mr. Jabber had given 4 or 5 different companies that he had talked to that he referred to the proper authorities, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting, Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, October 19th, 2020, at 6 p.m. in the Active Adult Center. All members of the committee were present, as well as all other council members and guests noted on the sheet. For topics of discussion, we had one late piece of legislation that we invoked Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This was a draft ordinance titled 2020-2021 Street Road Salt Program. This is authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Cargill Incorporated for the 2020-2021 Street Road Salt Program through the Community University Education Purchasing Association. Discussions about this is, I did some research online and a lot of surrounding communities were part of this, and they paid approximately the same dollar amount that we have I asked if there was other bidding methods. Mr. Tracy did say that there is other places out there, and he did mention ODOT as a program, but the CUE is typically the best place to go for price and service. Mrs. DeBevick asked what the typical stockpile of salt was for the city of Barberton annually. Mr. Tracy informed us that it was around 4,000 pounds and that we do currently have full, we are stocked full from last year with our salt. So this is gonna put us probably within our 20% minus. Mr. Heidig did confirm that the price of the salt per ton was the same as last year. And then the price, just for the record, if I can write it down here. So the price per ton that the city of Barberton is going to pay, well, the city of Barberton committed to 1,750 tons plus or minus 20%. The prices per ton is $71.89 if we have it dumped at our facility, $76.89 if we have it piled at our facility, and $76.89 if we have it conveyed. That's motion carried, and bring it to the floor. Miscellaneous discussion. The sewer construction project on North Van Buren will go from today, October 19th through the 23rd, and has North Van Buren closed from Washington to Franklin. And nothing else. We adjourned at 6:08 p.m. With that, pass.
Thank you. Next up, city utilities, Mr. Pope.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities had a special meeting this evening in the Active Adult Center. All members were present. We had a request for legislation in which we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This was a draft ordinance for a change order with Eclipse Construction authorizing a change in the amount of $18,089.06 for the Betts Ditch Restoration Project. This did pass, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is public welfare and safety. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety had a special meeting this evening. And we had two late requests for legislation, both of them regarding the legislation that we passed last week regarding the purchase of a new radio system. The first, so in order to bring these to the floor, both of them, we needed to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. The first one was titled Appropriation Fire Department, appropriating $3,921.20 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund. And this will be referred to finance. This additional amount is due to a component of the radio system being accidentally omitted from the original request. And Chief Persley weighed in and said this is for a battery analyzer, and this is imperative for routine maintenance. And he said that amount just got overlooked when he put the number together. So we will be voting on that piece of legislation. Well, we will be, referring that to finance. The second piece of legislation, we also invoked Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. It is titled Amend Ordinance Number 121-2020, Vasu Communications, Inc., amending Ordinance Number 121-2020 by increasing the amount of the contract with Vasu Communications, Inc. by $4,314.21. which would bring the total amount of the contract to $200,987.17. This is also a direct result of the additional appropriation. And the reason that this total here is we're increasing it by 4,314 is that number includes our 10% match. So, we need to change that, or amend that ordinance, so we can move forward with the purchase of the radio system. And if we recall, this is all a result of, grant money, with the exception of our 10%. And we had no requests, we had no miscellaneous discussion. And with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Thank you. Next up is Rules Marketing Development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules Marketing and Development met October 12th in the Active Adult Center. All members present and other guests as noted. We had no legislation to call for. We did have some miscellaneous discussion on a request for legislation on appointments. We made a motion to adjourn, and we adjourned at 6:24, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services, Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met October 19th at the Active Adult Center. All members were present, other council members noted, and guests. There was no new request for legislation. Miscellaneous discussions, we had Mr. Gear bring up the trash and the homeless, in the carts in the water by the Peaceful Fruits and Jen's Automotive. And with that, we adjourned at 6:12, sir.
Thank you. Next up is City Properties, Parks and Recreation, Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks and Recreation led off Monday, October 12th, 6 p.m. in the Active Adult Center. All members present, plus council and everybody noted. The legislation we had was the grant application for Parks and Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which that was taken care of there. And our miscellaneous discussion was Lake Anna Dark at the Park, Saturday, October 24th, 6 to 8:30. The entrance is a military honor roll for ages 10 and under. And a side note, this wasn't in the committee, but it was from Director McLean this evening. There still are slots open if anybody knows. Oddly enough, it's the later slots that are still open. The early ones are being taken pretty quickly. The later ones will actually be lit up, so it'll look nicer, which was kind of a surprise to us that those are the open ones. But if you know anybody with children 10 and under, and as Mrs. Devevic said, that we're not going to be strict enforcing, and as everybody pointed out, I misspoke and said over 10, but it is under 10. Please get a hold of the Parks Department and get the kids signed up. We adjourned at 6:02. With that, I pass.
Thank you. Last but not least is Finance Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met this evening. Our meeting started at 6:40. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council people and guests as noted on my sheet. We had 3 pieces of legislation that were late, and they were referred to us. And we had to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302 on all 3 pieces. The first piece was a draft ordinance titled Appropriation Fire Department. This was appropriating $3,921.20 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund, and it was referred from safety. Mrs. Devevic gave us a detailed account of what this particular appropriation is for, so I won't go into it again. It has to do with the radios that it was some of the cost was not included in the first piece of legislation. The second ordinance that we had and had to invoke Council Rule 702 and to suspend Council Rule 302 was a draft ordinance to authorize payment to Kimball Recycling and Disposal. This is to authorize the Director of Finance to pay invoices in the amount of $3,773.59 to Kimball Recycling and Disposal. This piece of legislation was in regard to a commercial building that had such a collection of pallets and what have you, that it was a fire hazard. It was brought to our attention, and it was handled by the fire department, the courts, our safety director, and finally, the finance director with this late request for an authorization to pay this invoice. And it is an invoice that was dated prior to the purchase order. The property has been cleaned up, and this particular amount will be paid by the owner of the property. The next piece of legislation was also a late piece, and we invoked Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 302. This piece of legislation was a draft ordinance titled Appropriation CARES Act Funding. This is appropriating $4,500 of the CARES Act funding from the unappropriated item of the local coronavirus relief fund to the operation and maintenance budget of the local coronavirus relief fund. This is for a one-time cleaning of 9 buildings, which include the water treatment plant, the water garage, street garage, both fire stations, and other buildings. We can use this CARES Act money to do this sanitizing, and we will fill out the proper paperwork in order to be able to use those funds for this particular job. We had no miscellaneous discussion tonight, and we adjourned at 7 p.m., and with that, finance will pass.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have an announcement to make. If you haven't read your email, because of the election, 2 weeks from today, they will be setting up in this room. So we're very fortunate to have 5 Mondays in November. So we are pushing off. We will not have a meeting on the first Monday because this room will be occupied. So we're going to go the next 4 meetings in November on those Mondays. So the 2nd and the 4th week of November will be Committee of the Whole, and the 3rd and the 5th Monday will be legislative meetings. Like I said, we're lucky to have 5 Mondays that month, so. Anything else remarks from the body? Mr. Jay.
Mr. President, I was wondering, so far in 2020, you have not taken a picture of all of us together as council members.
Okay.
I was wondering if somebody from one of our guests can take a picture of all of us after this council meeting?
No.
Will everybody should take a big group picture as a council member of the team? Since we don't have nothing on record?
If I may, I don't, as much as I want that, I would prefer that we do something like that once we have clearance to have a gallery of citizens in here. I don't think that the social distancing would be a factor, but if I want to see a picture of all of us, I want citizens in the room with us as well.
Yeah, but people are still asking, I've had people say, who's in the council? Is anybody interested in taking a picture?
Like I said, I am not only because of the health department rules of social distancing.
Right.
It's only because, and I believe we should, but only because we're in this room and not in our own chambers, which I would love to go back to. It just seems it seems off place. Once we go to the council chambers again, I would love to.
It'd be nice to get all of us together as a team, nice to paint a picture, I say.
I believe so too, but I'd rather do it in council chambers with,
Make it happen.
when we can have citizens involved as well.
And when everybody's here, the mayor's not here.
As council members, I said, I apologize for getting that part.
Anything else? Mr. Culver?
No,
You have-
I didn't
Okay.
have it. No,
You had your pen up.
sorry.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 7:27.
Oh, I bought it, didn't I?
Yeah. I'm trying to take it off.
No, I said, it's germs, I don't want it.
Dana? Say something?
Have you worked with the pool? I mean, are there? Carol,
Well, that's true.
Have a good one, man.
You two, I'll look at that
Yeah.
tomorrow. Yeah, it's supposed to be.
Well, that's what.
All right, Mr. President, we'll see you. See the building might be
Yeah.
40 years of junk, baby.
I'm good. Did you get those stairs?
I'd sell them for $100 and give the money to the party.
If Justin's wife won't kill him, he's fine.
Hey, Justin, you want to? You. Go ahead. Look at the money for
His wife's already.
Well, the guy that's working on the project said they ran.
My plates, my GP's place, my plates expired, so I got the letters. I said, no, screw it, I'm gonna see if there's, you know, stuff in the, other plates around the house.
They're expensive.
It's $50 extra. I'm excited to I also had this. I got the word magics. No one else had that here, really? No, you are really. And there's no drills kind of run like Jeep. You can either get one plate or two plate, that'd be awesome.
Maybe two. I think you'll look at it. Disappointed nobody else had it.
Justin.
Oh, yeah, what was up?
What was going on?
He's got, hey, I got 4 seats from the Reynolds Gymnasium.
Oh, yeah?
On a South. But I paid $100 for them.
I'm excited.